For the minute?
The shortest one is actually Greek, so it would make the most sense to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So now we need.
I'm on my
We
computer now,
wanted
so I
to
can
take
just
a
do the
break
announcement.
from this
Okay,
in order to do
I also have that in there, but you're probably gonna do
Okay.
it.
workshops. Is not quite the right word for them.
The shortest one is actually Greek, so here's the next.
I guess we want to.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna circle it like this.
Okay.
So then it'll still stick out. So now we need.
I'm on my computer now, so I can take a break from this in order to do
I also have that, but you're probably gonna do it.
workshops. Is not quite the right word.
The shortest one is actually Greek, so I guess we want to do. I'm gonna circle it like this. So then it'll still stick out.
Are we just hearing time delayed? There's snow. Ourselves. Are we just hearing time delayed? So meta. Answers that question.
I think this is something that is okay for an S channel in general.
So you
Yeah,
have
I
them
just wanna.
like somewhere. They're looking at some live thing that's happening, and you have a time delayed video. The time delayed video is slightly different than what actually happened live. Like you can make it very obvious in the beginning, and then they just have to pay enough attention to what's going on.
Yes.
Do you need to have an ETA and when you're going to be ready to go? Or are you ready
Wait.
to go? Okay. Do we want to clean up the lunch things?
Yes.
Not yet.
Mhm.
Oh. Has everybody gotten lunch things that they want to get?
Mr. Wright, is it okay if I give you the channel URL instead of the stream URL, since the stream URL will change every time we stop and start streaming?
Oh, yeah, sure.
This is so hard.
Okay, I will change mine to the channel URL that you just pasted. Or we can keep that.
I keep seeing sock, but it's not relevant.
Hmm.
But here's not.
Ah, nice.
Okay, so we have knit, not no.
Snow.
We have snow?
Yeah.
Great. We still need slow. Was that right?
Specifically emailing Craig.
We still need slot?
We have slot.
We have slot. We still need snow. We have slow, right? Do we? Slow. No, that's slow.
Slim? Or no, slow and slim.
Slow and no, it's slim. Slim we.
Slow and slim, yes.
Slim is somewhere. Great.
Slow.
And slim.
Give them the same
Here's
suggestion of
what?
using
Cool.
the words mass and main.
So we still need snow.
No, slow.
Slow.
Whatever. Yeah.
Slow.
Anything else that was necessary?
Okay.
So one thing that may possibly be helpful is that in one of the puzzles that we solved, the words that were given, like these, that were some of them are answers and some are words. The given words were actually clues. What it did.
Mm.
I don't know how main and mess would be clues. It's not as obvious as like opposite or exception or doubled or whatever.
Well, it's definitely a mess.
But
So, there are intersections of words that are in the word ladders.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we should care about those intersections. Like,
Mass means anagram. Exception 10, bro.
So here there's an intersection at an O. Here there's an intersection at an L. And 2 more O's? No, 1 more.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
These don't look that great in the thumbnail.
You need a meeting.
That's the best
and somebody's
thumbnail.
gonna say
Thanks.
something,
Oh look,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
me.
that
I
makes
don't look
sense.
good in that. You win though.
Yeah, I definitely win.
There's also this
It's like that.
Actually, which
Okay, so
Here
let's start
there's
to
an
work.
intersection.
You're like,
Ken,
confuse your
This is
There's
no
no one
friends
here.
or
This isn't even technically a match.
And an I.
Clearly,
And another I.
the cryptic tutorial was successful in that.
Right, those intersections all happen?
Solve, clear problems.
So good.
Oh, you missed the
Posting
first
on
time.
team name ideas. From
That's
this
unfortunate.
is actually here's a little aside. Behold, I
Oh,
tell you a
that's
mystery.
here.
We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. And why? So the answer is watch.
It does sound like it could be a clip.
Okay, let's try to solve the other lines now.
Why is that a team name? Like
Wait, where's? Oh, never mind. That's it.
Because, I've seen
That's it,
and,
right?
things that
Those are not
make
words.
me think of mystery
Nope.
hunt, especially the Zolo. Why do the nations so furiously rage together? Why do the nations
There's a mess.
rage?
Mhm.
I didn't do that like a minute,
Oh, you're right.
Cleaning up.
Sorry, did you want to more awake than
If I were
the
making this
line?
puzzle, the position of the words in the grid
Are
would
we
be.
wanting to?
Better one?
And I say that because
I'm always okay with markups.
for this number of words, you don't need a grid this large.
Indeed, especially considering that there's all of this largely unused
No.
space.
It's totally okay.
I'm kind of surprised that we solved all the other puzzles before this.
All the other puzzles?
Well, no, we still have that number 6 puzzle.
Yeah,
That's
there's
the
the
yellow,
yellow
right?
puzzle, the
Yeah.
black puzzle, and the blue puzzle, plus the meta.
I think the
Yeah,
blue
20 by
the black puzzle is the meta puzzle.
It's not.
No,
Look,
there's
it's
another
from
meta.
Flipchart.
This
There's
is
a
the
couple
meta.
more.
That's the
Black
meta.
is
And
probably.
black
I mean, black has to be a meta though. A meta though, right? It's not the meta.
Oh, I know, but
So,
like,
like,
like
how-
counted.
That's a shell meta. Does that count as a shell? Or is that a pure meta?
No, because
black
there's
is-
a black
black
circle
is-
in the shell.
Black is.
Oh, oh, oh.
Maybe I was just pointing out this is a puzzle, and that's a meta.
Yeah. Thanks, Casey.
I mean, I feel like it looks kind of.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But what's weird is all the other puzzles. But what's a black and white puzzle? Because all the other puzzles were color puzzles that
No,
go
it's-
into
I
the
think
color
it's
meta.
Black
Isn't it
and
just
white
saying
means
how to
you
print
do
it?
not need to print this.
No.
Oh,
Wait,
really?
Whether it says color black and white at the bottom is about.
Oh, okay. That's helpful. That's
That is a because everyone prints their own puzzles at these things, and
I
so
see.
it's hey, you can print this in black and white.
okay. I thought the distinction of the thing at the bottom meant that was like a different class of puzzle, but it's just another.
I could separate out the word puzzle and the word meta and the word black and white and the word color.
Alright, so does that mean I can actually look at this?
I mean,
I mean, the thing
You're
is, it's
welcome
still
to.
just answer. But
Yeah.
unless the answer is answer, I don't.
And none
Want
of
an
those
answer?
answers are colored, I'll point out. Like, we wrote down the answers to your puzzles, but, like,
Right, we have to
normally if
figure
we
out
had
what
to
order
puzzles, they would be colored.
Yeah, but
So the black one is like a shellless meta, but it is not in this
Yes.
in the structure. of the
Well,
front.
I mean, to some degree, every puzzle in the thing is a meta since they all have the answers from other puzzles in them.
So, I mean, the shell here is it's very minimal shell here. I mean, this is a complete graph.
Mhm.
So there's hardly anything here. So
Oh, yeah.
the ability to get two different, essentially pure metas out of the same set of answers, I would be surprised if that was possible.
Hmm.
well, how do we know
What puzzle
which
doesn't
one we're
have any
doing?
colors on the answers? Like,
But one of them, the assignment of color to answers matters. Because so far none of it hasn't mattered which color each puzzle was. And so any color could have taken
Right.
any answer.
that doesn't matter in either of these.
I've flexed.
I think it will matter in this one.
Oh, the
Yes.
literal color. I see
Yes.
the literal name of the color or whatever.
Right, like that's like in addition to
I
having,
see.
because that's why it's black and white, and that's why it's a really pure meta, because not only do you have the answers, but you had what colors went with those answers.
Oh, and which names and which I don't know. We have other stuff.
It's done.
But
Thank you.
yeah, the colors themselves.
Is this done? Yes, thank you.
Although actually, I take that back. Like that could matter more
Okay, again, but with real orders.
here. So the thing about the shot, I see your point is minimal, right? So it's a complete graph. So the orders of the colors here don't
Yeah.
actually matter.
But it could be for his strategy.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like it may not be right. Like it's a complete graph, but this particular like
order,
arrangement
yeah,
of it
that
could
could
be
be
significant.
Yeah.
Right. Like it may matter what's next to each other on the edge versus across. It would be the same graph if you. Like, so that would make the mapping of colors to answers significant. What order are these answers in? Are they in color order?
No, they're in order read.
Okay, we should put the answers in color order and like make sure it's not just alphabetical or something, then the colors wouldn't matter. What?
Is there an order?
You could rainbow.
Oh, yeah,
There's
sure.
a part of me that wants another view that in these eyes probably, but knows that I really, really shouldn't have it. So that's not a good choice. Decap. I really, really copies.
So again, so one thing to note is like there is probably a like flow of the answers that we might want to fill out on that graph.
Oh, which answers which ones do?
Really?
Oh, that's good.
Oh,
idea.
right,
that is
right.
a good idea.
It's
yeah.
a graph. Some
Yeah.
some edges matter and some edges matter less.
Yes.
Oh,
That makes sense.
directed,
Make a directed graph.
directed graph.
That's
Okay.
gotta be.
All right, we're putting
Orange
arrows.
and
Here,
blue.
please sound like a puzzle graph.
Okay, so
Red, orange, and green feed.
Large decaf caramel soy latte. What is it?
Everything feeds into black.
yeah.
Does it or does nothing feed?
1, 2, 3,
well, we
4,
don't- they don't
5,
have
It
colors.
says it forms a traversable graph, so something must feed into black, or black must feed into something. And we know black doesn't feed into anything, so
That doesn't
I'm
imply
just
that all
Traceable, they're not
edges are
traceable graph.
all vertices are used.
yeah.
Okay.
I will note the following.
Yeah, I guess that would-
It is possible, although this would be mean, that black feeds into black, and then only 5 other
Oh,
puzzles
right.
feed into
Or-
There's self edges here. If you never use
Yeah.
them, then
Well,
that,
green,
then why are
green
they on
has
the
a self.
chart?
Green has a self edge, definitely.
Why?
The green puzzle
Yeah,
was
the
the one
answer
that
is
the answer
answer.
is answer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it would also
Can we
be
start the meta workshop?
it would also
like
be
now?
technically possible that you
That's
have
awesome.
your
Are we going to do it here or downstairs?
That is
I
true.
don't know why you would do that.
There could be repeats, or black could draw on itself.
I know where I'm
We
going
might
to
we might
I
want
don't
to wait.
feel good about
sit
repeats, but actually,
So
do
we
like
might
the
want
idea
to
that
wait
black
to
is
take
self-
some
I need the red.
That would be mean,
I need the red.
but entirely possible.
Green does it.
Well, green does it in a trivial way.
What partner
Green is the empty.
I don't think that carrying multiple chairs down those stairs is the smartest idea. Maybe 2 is
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but everyone taking a chair is better than
Twice.
trying to maneuver with 2
That
chairs.
self edge is the graphic.
The power script on the side says like caution, risk of electric shock, blah blah blah. And I feel like it should say caution, sparky.
What's that?
Your power script has a sticker on the side that says like caution, risk of electric shock, blah blah blah. And I feel like it should just say caution, sparky.
Same as that one.
And for Shane to do the trapeze with Bella.
Okay, folks should perhaps consider coming downstairs for meta talk in a few minutes here.
I might take the puzzle and stare at it.
Matt can almost do half.
If you want to take this puzzle and stare at it.
And then like.
Yeah, but like, this one is just
Matt
smaller.
cannot do Seven Star. You know, we
And also, I think we're more confused about this one.
Like,
Really? Yes.
That way it's possible for me.
I look at this one.
Go for it.
There's something you should know. That'd be great. Like all of
Where are you planning to stand, Amos?
I was gonna sit on that photo corner.
That one right there?
Yeah.
All right. I will try to point a camera at you.
That's, yeah. I can take one of these chairs if it's necessary for pointing the camera at me. But
I think I can do it on the back of the couch.
Okay. My preference was.
Ooh,
sitting on the
brownies. I'm going to provisionally set this behind your head.
Okay.
And then later, when it becomes apparent that this can't possibly work, I will do something else, but I want to get a brownie.
Oh.
Also, may I sit
I brought my laptop down to put it away, but the bag was already
Take it.
upstairs. I was thinking it was still last night when all my stuff was down here.
Look at this. Snacks
Oh my
on
goodness.
Oh,
Those gooseberries, you all are fools. I don't know what's wrong with you, but they're mine now. These are walnut cookies, these are sesame cookies, and they're truly amazing.
They also
These are
taste
coconut macarons, and these are berries.
Chacaron, macaron.
the not taste the way I expected them to.
No, they're like caramel
But there's
cookies.
still people up there.
They don't taste like cereal. I think we've got it.
Did I sit in front of your feet?
There can be more or less of this cushion if you want.
So she doesn't want to.
Well,
I can text her to see if
She is specifically going for a lock.
Okay.
so right now I have both the screen and Amos's face.
Okay.
Hi.
As long as neither of you moves at all.
We're go. We're
Can someone actually just check the YouTube channel to make sure that the stream is working?
Oh, are we streaming?
Someone with a
Yes.
laptop, just very quickly. The link is in Slack.
Stream? Is the audio? How is streaming working?
The camera is pointed towards Amos.
Okay.
The only things the camera can see are Amos's face and the TV screen.
No. I'm good with that. Whatever. I was just confused. Now I understand.
someone's phone.
Now I can see Amos and this being on the screen.
Okay, great.
Okay.
We're good.
Welcome everyone to a free slideshow. I don't know how many people get that, but it's
Wow.
So
I'm
there
not
are
sure which is worse, that I missed that or that
Right.
you did that.
So
Yes.
there are essentially people often talk about pure metas and shell metas. That's really more of a spectrum. Most metas are not 100% pure. There is some little bit of information. There's some flavor text. There's a title. There's a theme, something like that. And then you go all the way to shell, where like you're given explicit instructions on what to do with an answer and put them into the thing, and you're just, it's hard because there are not enough answers until you've solved everything. I am going to be talking almost entirely about pure and the pure side of the spectrum, where some of these things have extra things, but there are things you can do that are just pure first. So there are two things that are involved here. There is some kind of ordering mechanism and some kind of extraction mechanism. And what that corresponds to is you're trying to get an English word, and the letters have to be in some order, and you need some set of letters. So you need to do that. And it happens in some different ways. So we can talk about order. So order, some of the easiest things are when it's just given to you. To identify whether it's just given to you or not, you can compare to some other rounds. In this round, is the puzzle titles alphabetized, but in other rounds it is not? Are there some associated numbers somewhere that are not consecutive? There was the playing cards metas a few years ago where like one of the puzzles had just random numbers in the playing cards and other ones had like 2 through 8. And that tells you that the 2 through 8 has been ordered and the randomized thing has not been ordered. If you can't tell until you have solved something, just assume that the order is important. If it's not immediately obvious that the order is important. So that's the easiest thing. Another thing that is pretty common is that it's in the puzzle info. So it's in the puzzle title, it might be in the flavor text, it might be in kind of a random piece of data. There was the Rage puzzles in 2018 where you had these images of these thermometers and that was your ordering. Was find which one had the least amount of rage and the most amount of rage and order it that way. When it comes to puzzle title or flavor text, it might not be the most direct thing, but like there was the witch hunt from the time travel year where there was a witch associated with each of the puzzles. They were all fictional witches, and so there was an introduction when they were introduced, right? The Willow might have been one of them. Like, when was Willow in Buffy the Vampire Slayer first introduced? And you can order it by that. So it's not necessarily a direct, they're going to tell you this is the second puzzle, but you can use information from the flavor text.
Next thing, pretty common, is letter length. So in this one, this is the Fighter Meta from 2017. You have unique letter lengths from 4 to 14, I think it is. And so this is a lot easier when you have all of the puzzles, but you might not have all of the puzzles. Almost always, you will drop spaces when you do this. So that last answer is Bobby Hendricks. It is Bobby Space Hendricks. The space does not matter. You're just counting the number of letters. This is something to pay attention to if you're trying to figure out when you don't have all of the answers. Is it all unique so far with the number of puzzles you know in the round? Do you know that you can fit all of the holes? That kind of thing. So another one is alphabetical. So very importantly, do not randomly alphabetize. That is not something that is done with meta puzzles. If you have just 7 words and you alphabetize them, it's almost certainly wrong. They might give them to you alphabetized, it's telling you there's another order. But when you want to alphabetize, they're going to give you consecutive letters of the alphabet as the first letters. Or everything is the same first letter and the second letter is consecutive, or something like that. So as an example, you've got this one from 2016. So you had K through Q, unique letters that are all consecutive. In this, and that meant you could order alphabetically. In this particular case, it was also relevant, and in general, I would say, if it's not the beginning of the alphabet that they use, if it's not A, B, C, D, E, there's probably a reason why they gave that to you. If it's the end of the alphabet, there may or may not be a reason why they gave that to you. But if it's in the middle, what I've come across is that it always matters. Now, you might want to look at K and Q as the first and last letters. In this particular case, you actually had to look right outside, and JR was the hint to what to do elsewhere. If people remember. So that's another one of the orders. Another one here is when you kind of chain or cycle things through. So in this case, you have overlapping trigrams in all of your answers. So the STO at the end of manifesto is the beginning of stop codon, and you just form a chain going this way, and that is how you now order your answers. This one's kind of interesting. So far everything I've described is there's an ordering to the answers, and so you do that, and then you're doing something that I haven't gotten into yet about extracting from it. In this case, the 5 answers are this Friacalo, Glycum, Desmensant. The ordering that you're getting for your final answer is based on what it is you did. So in this case, each column, they're all 10 letters long. Each column has a single repeated letter. So in the first column, you have the letter G. In the second column, you have the letter U. And you're reading in that order left to right, which is kind of independent of your answers. You could order your answers however you wanted. It doesn't matter. It's not part of how you're getting a word out of this at the end. So moving on to extraction. So the most basic things are you can read your first letters and get this, or your last letters and get that. You can diagonalize with your team. Or the rest of your team can help you with some nth letters. This one's a little interesting in that nth letters are usually clued in some way. So the one meta puzzle that I can remember where you took second letters instead, it had to do with the second largest city in a country. And so when you're doing nth letters, it's usually kind of clued that you're doing that kind of thing. And lastly, you can take the middle letters and get Nabu, the Sumerian or Mesopotamian god of wisdom. I wrote this in about 3 minutes and it turned out to be hard to do the rest. So these are kind of those basic ways of pulling out. First letter and diagonalization are by far the most common. When any of these are used, there's going to be some interesting mechanic in figuring out the order. So you're never going to just, if you're given an order, you're never just going to read a diagonal or read first letters or anything like that. You're going to have to do something to get a new order, and then you're going to use that, and like you've done some interesting order, and now it's easier to just get an answer out of the end. So you can also find letter patterns. So you can get the lone repeated letter. So like the R in library is the only letter that is repeated. You can get repeated bigrams, and so you only have like the AG in baggage claim. You can have a doubled letter where some other letters are repeated. There's 2 N's in here, but the EE is consecutive. It's spells rage for anyone who didn't pick up on that. This kind of pulling letters can also be used to order things rather than just extracting. So like if you got repeated letters that were the letter A and then the letter B and then the letter C, you can use that to order things and then extract it in a different way. You can also have letter patterns that are complicated but consistent. So going back to our thing from earlier that we ordered, all of these answers have this ABAA pattern. So you have like in preteen you have an E and then a letter and then two E's. And every single one of these words has that letter pattern. And in this case you were reading the single letter in the middle. That's the more common thing just because it's really hard to get letters that are just one letter something and then those same two letters again. You're very limited what this can be. So it's more likely you're reading the thing in the middle. Moving on. So you can also get relevant letters. So letters can become very significant after you've done something. So in our example from before with the overlapping trigrams, once we got that as an ordering, reading either the first letter of that trigram or the second letter of that trigram or the third letter of that trigram is significant. Whereas before it wasn't quite. And in this case it is the middle letters and it reads tobacco, and they just did a nice little thing where the trigrams that didn't overlap with anything, those green letters, are A to Z, just so you know which direction the cycle goes in. You can also have one like this. So in this one, you have all these answers. There's 4 that read across. There are 4 that read down. You form this nice little grid with them. Once you've filled in this grid, well, the places where things, the diagonals of this grid become relevant, whereas before they may not have been. Just reading the first letter of Padawan and reading the third letter of Ruming, those weren't significant until this grid was formed. And once you do that, you get this answer that reads twin pops, so bottom left to up right, and then top left to bottom right. You can also get some random pieces of data. So again, in 2018, the sadness puzzles, each of the puzzles had the different number of lines around the titles of the puzzle. So Nobody Likes Sad Songs has like 3 lines, and Unfortunate AI has, or Unfortunate Al has like 6 lines or something. And those can then be used as an index into answers to pull something out. But wait, there's more. Do you have a question?
I was just going to say, if you ordered by something like that, have you ever seen it where then, like diagonalizing, instead of diagonalizing after sorting, like if you're, I'm sorry, I'm saying this wrong maybe, like I was thinking, have you ever seen it where you diagonalize before certain, so you're given them in some order, which is the index, but then you pick that before. Or is that?
I don't quite follow what you're saying. So with this last one with the lines, those lines might have been used for an ordering. If they were unique and consecutive, they could have been an ordering instead. And if you've done that, they can then be diagonalization, where really diagonalization is so things served as both the index and the order.
Sparky, I think I can picture the thing you're describing.
Yeah, it turns out that was actually not the place to ask the question I was asking, so it's fine. I can picture the thing you're describing, and I think the answer is like, if you're stuck, try it, but anything that takes that many words to describe is a bad mechanism and a writer shouldn't use it.
Fair. It's generally good advice. So
That doesn't mean they don't.
yeah. So some random things that can happen is we have a nice list of words. This is all the answers for the 2012 service line meta. And what you actually have to do is pair them up. So you can pair them up where letter lengths are all matched up. And so you have 2 6-letter words, 2 7-letter words, 2 8-letter words, etc. So they get paired up. And in this case, one of the pairs of the word has 3 O's in it. And this was a 3-ring circus theme. And so you both got an ordering and an extraction. So you got an ordering by after pairing them up by, you have 2 6, 2 7, 2 8, etc. And then you have an extraction coming from where the O's are in one word. You read the letters in the other word.
Spelling Elephantina Tutu?
Elephantina
Tutu. Thank you.
So the kind of opposite of that, instead of taking 2 answers and combining them into one, you can have all of the answers are 2-word answers. And when all of the answers are 2-word answers, in this case the order was given, And this particular one of the words was actually a French word, and you could convert it to the English word. So like pain and royal pain is actually French for bread. French was clued in this case. It's not like French was clued. This was the Civilization super meta in the video game year. Once you've done that conversion of like pain to bread, the letter lengths of the two words you now have matched up. And so like royal and bread are both 5 letters long, and you can pull out the A is the overlapping letter in that thing.
That's exceptional.
So gorgeous.
This was super exceptional because it was a super meta, and all 6 of these answers were meta answers. I was very impressed with this one. Yeah. I also have no idea how many, like, this feels very constrained. Like, the number of 2-word phrases where one of the words is a French word that can be converted to a thing without even being real, like,
to an English word that is the same length as the other word and has a letter in a matching
letter. Like, this is super constrained.
This seems totally unconstructable.
I agree. I'm very impressed.
Something I could program.
And this is where, like, oftentimes when this kind of things happen, you end up, like, the answer to this was orange. That's proof that this was really over-constrained, because they did not give you a punny answer. Because everybody likes punny answers in their final meta things.
Yeah.
So you can also combine, I put title in quotation marks. My example here is not actually title. So this was the, 2010 was the time travel year. This was the Metropolis meta, where every single puzzle had an associated robot with it. So you've got the Terminator, you have Lieutenant Commander Data. They gave you all these spellings, so you don't have to worry about like LT for Lieutenant. And when you solve the puzzle, the answer, the letter lengths were the same as that robot association. And it could be the same as the title as well. And when you did that, in each of these, you had 4 letters that overlapped in the same spot. Again, very common mechanic. And then there was more to this puzzle. There was a bit of a shell that went on around it. That part was easier once you figured out grabbing these 4 letters up. So association here is kind of the most used thing. So what you're trying to do is take your answers and do something with them, maybe, or leave them alone, and I'll get into some examples. And you're kind of getting a new set out of them. So like in the last thing with the French words, like they were French words. That's a set of things. These are French words that you can convert to English words. It's going to be themed. When it's not themed, it's usually a very shitty meta puzzle. Not always. Sometimes they're still elegant and unthemed like that, but for the most part, if there's some theme to what's going on, you're trying to find a set of things that goes with that theme or something adjacent to that theme. And this association might also apply to puzzle titles. I didn't put the example in here, but there was the Goosebumps thing from the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where the puzzle titles were almost exactly the same as the first 7 Goosebump titles. And so you did that association, and now you have an ordering based on that. So, some examples. So you can have the direct association. So in the direct association, these are all, I can't remember what.
Collective nouns.
Collective nouns, thank you. So like a pride of lions, it's a mischief of mice, it's intrusion of cockroaches, etc.
Who comes up with these?
The internet, I think.
Yeah.
There's a Wikipedia page.
There is a Wikipedia page, and it's got a bunch of options for each of these things. So,
troubling of goldfish, so it's the well-known ones.
yeah, and that's what, they're never going to use well-known ones for something like this, because the most important thing about when they're direct is you can literally type in, when you have 4 of these answers, type it into a search engine, and you will get the thing. This is one of the easier meta puzzles that year. So there's a bunch of times where, like, you don't know what to do, try putting them all into a search engine. It might work. So in this case, after you did that, the order here was given, it was just reading the first letters, right? So the extraction was easy, the order was given, but you need to do this association transformation first. So you can also have things hidden within, and that can be in a number of ways. So in this case, it's consecutive letters. So you can find fictional characters in all of these. So you've got Alf in Alf Franken, you've got He-Man in The Manchurian Candidate, Ender and Lavender, etc. This did a few things. So one, this actually gave an ordering because they were all found at a different position in the answer. So Alf is at the first position of its answer, He-Man is at the second position, etc. It forms this nice diagonal. There was then a little bit more here. This was the Hygera meta back in Escape from Zizzlevaria and Hygera's homeworld. And so what you were actually doing was then converting these fictional characters to their homeworlds and then reading, I think, first letters. I don't quite remember. So once you've found this thing, it might not be the end, but the finding this thing is almost always the difficult part we have in metas. Find that this word exists in this thing and is from this set of things. That's the most important part here. So you can also have it hidden within where it's the beginning and the end of it. So in this case, this was the build meta last year. And so Brazenly Evil, you can find Brazil by reading some letters from the beginning, some letters from the end. Chemistry Savvy has Chevy. In this case, again, there was a bit of a shell going on. One of the things, we actually picked up on this quickly. The thing that proved to be difficult was these are all either nuts or bolts. And that was the theme of the building. And once you got that, then filling into the shell part of what they had was actually pretty easy.
Can I ask how they're all nuts or bolts?
Okay, a Brazil nut, a donut.
Chevy
God.
Chevy makes the car the bolt. Donut.
It's alright.
You got it now?
It's very funny.
Yeah. So I believe it was Fulbert and Roland that only like one person in the room actually recognized as a nut or a bolt.
Yeah. Roland, I have no idea. Like
Maybe it was Roland. Like it was like only one person noticed, but like we could also look it up at that point. The only one of these that was unambiguous, or that was ambiguous before we understood the nuts and bolts thing, was conifer and confer. We didn't know which word it was. Other than that, these were all unique words, just for getting beginning and end. So you can also have hidden within, you can have it jumping. So in this case, you can see 1. All the odd numbers are in green. Even numbers are in red and going backwards.
Wow.
wait.
How does that work?
You.
Solito is reading it backwards. TWO. It's number 2.
Oh, that's what you mean by odd and even.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. This is, the numbers 1 through 10 are found in these answers.
Yes.
Spelled out. Spelled out.
But they weren't
But
ordered
half
like
them are
this
backwards.
until
They
you
were not.
discovered
Yes.
that.
They were not ordered like this. Finding those numbers was the ordering. And once you found those numbers, then you could order them. And the fact that evens were going one way, odds were going the other way, you actually, and I don't have it on here, but you read the first letter of the odd answers and the even, or sorry, first letter of the odd and the last letter of the even ones, and it spells cold shift.
How do you even find that?
So how to find that is weird. Pole shift was easy. Finding the numbers is hard.
Yeah.
The main thing when you're trying to look for these is why in the world is the answer leatherette? Why isn't it just leather?
Yeah.
Why, like, that's a weird answer. Why is it that weird? What did they need in order to make that happen?
I remember looking at the 2 T's in that a lot and thinking I had to get the 2 T's.
Sowito was the other one that we stared at for a really long time because, like, that's
a weird word.
What's Robin's thing? The cromulence factor of Sowito is low. And so it's take a look at that, and like the other thing to look at is always short answers. The really short answers and the really long answers usually try and tell you something. In this case, it was the really short answers. Access has not a whole lot, and you've got 6 sitting there and using up almost all the letters. But yeah, I think we stared at this one for quite a while. So you can also have, this one's actually rare, but I thought I'd throw it in as an example of like, this is a non-complete list of things that you might use for association. So this is a consonancy. All of the consonants in the answers, except for 1, match in order exactly the consonants of the planets. So planets were very much strongly hinted. This was the planet Pluto. The consonancy is a little difficult to notice because there's an extra consonant. So Americares, I put in green all of the consonants that overlap with Mercury, and I underlined the S. And so it's a little bit tough to see this. In general, constancy is difficult to read. This is the only time I've ever seen it. I bring it up as there are random ass things that people will do that make some sense, but are very difficult to categorize. And this is kind of one of them.
Of course, the extraction is two vowels also. So.
There's only two vowels.
Well, sure, yeah.
It's pretty easy, and they did that a little much that year. This was the Escape from Zaswera year, and there was another meta that was far more complicated that also had to do with, like, we're giving you consonants only in the way that this works. So this is probably the most common thing. So anagram things or not, and replace or add or subtract a letter. So those two things can be combined. You can anagram and replace a letter, anagram and lose a letter. You can not anagram and replace a letter, not anagram and add a letter, etc. So in this one, you have these answers: Rex, the Ram, etc. This was the ATM meta, and ATM can be ended with a sphere for the atmosphere, and these are all the 5 layers of the atmosphere with an extra letter. So Rex is the exosphere when you remove the R, etc. And then the ordering is pretty obvious once you've done this association. There are layers to the atmosphere, and they go in order. And the letter you're extracting is also very easy. It was that extra letter, and you just got that out and got radio. It's a little tough because, like, that ATM thing is definitely it's going off banks, not off of atmosphere, but yeah.
Yeah, so you were talking a little bit about cromulence earlier, and I just kind of wanted to highlight how important, like, the sort of sense of how likely something is to solving stuff like this. Like, this word looks unlikely, then you should think about why. But, like, a fact like this, like, oh, Rex makes exosphere, the Ram makes thermosphere, like, if you've got one answer, like, you can't possibly have any confidence in a theory like that, because there's so many different bullshit theories of that quality you could make up about one answer. When you have 2 of these, you should start getting really suspicious, and by the time you have 3, you should be thinking about, like, what's the probability this could be a coincidence? By the time you have 3 of these, it's 0.
Yeah. And in this case, how do you figure it out with the cromulence factor and everything? The Ram is really interesting. Like, putting the word "the" in a really short thing like that, they needed to do that. The answer couldn't just be Ram. They needed to put the word "the" in front of it to do what they wanted to do. And that's a thing to kind of key in on.
Oh, that one also does not anagram.
There's no anagramming on this one. That would have actually made this probably impossible because the words are too short.
Yeah.
So if you have short words like this and you're anagramming and dropping the letter, you're gonna have a million different things that could be. Speaking of anagrams, so here we have a lot longer words, and this is the Triforce of Fellowship meta from Video Game Year.
All right.
Fellowship. So you can anagram these words, replace a letter, and you're going to get one of the Fellowship of the Ring. From Lord of the Rings, the order was given. You just end up reading what the letter you add, like the R from Frodo, you read that off, and it says Regal Ring. So when you have words like pre-rinse,
dioramic,
webisms.
Like, these are words that you might want to try anagramming.
Warning danger. Yeah.
Does our anagrammer give us names of
No,
Lord of the Rings characters?
So,
oh yeah, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it uses Wikipedia article titles.
Mixmaster has the best
sweet.
word bank.
yes. And even has a thing where you can replace a letter in an anagram, I think.
Okay, so you can delete a letter or you can add a letter. You'd have to write extra code to replace a letter.
Okay. I would go through Nutramatic and just kind of drop a letter and replace it with an unknown letter and then see what came up.
Like all other words, these are words that indicate you should anagram.
I was going to ask, is that, I mean, do you remember working on this, like, do you try to do that and find one of the anagrams first, or, like, would someone have noticed that there was 9 of them and the title was Fellowship?
I don't remember, but from what Glenn said, in this case, if you get one, you know it's right.
You're done.
That's true.
The
Yeah,
theme is
party's
so
over.
strong that if you get one of these to
Get
anagram
Frodo.
to someone from Fellowship, you
You're done.
know it's the thing to do.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether
I
I
don't
would,
remember
I
how
would
it's
notice
solved.
that there was 9 things and 9 fellowship characters
Oh.
before I anagrammed it.
And
each
someone
one.
might have done
I
that.
think that was what happened.
Okay, yeah, I don't quite.
But how can you see granola and not think of Aragorn?
I would have been very suspicious
Well,
of
that's
Fire
But you would have to remember the name Meriadoc to make any use of it.
but maybe other people
So-
would have that problem. Sure.
So moving on, so all of those associations were kind of in what was going on there. You can also do kind of these consistent modifications. So this one, there was a theme of like, it was the Red Scare. This is the Witch Hunt meta, actually. So there was a theme of this is the Red Scare. You can replace one of the letters consistently with the word red to form a new word. And
What is the word redoc?
redoc, I think.
Redoc. What's that word? Is a bullshit word.
Madra is,
Like Doc again?
I believe, the character from King Arthur.
I thought he had more art.
Then I don't know. This one I actually, when I added it to it, I'm like, this one's a little weird.
Most of them are pretty good, actually.
Most of them are pretty good, but they're not all pretty good.
They're not all pretty good.
They're not all pretty good. We
Yeah.
solved this during the hunt.
Remember that
so.
that legend was written before spelling was invented. So.
I will also say
Modred is indeed an alternate spelling of Mordred.
Yeah.
Now you all know.
So I will point out that from the kind of researching I was doing for this thing, meta puzzles have gotten cleaner as time has gone on. The 2009-2010 metas are not as clean as the 2017, which is the same set of people as 2009, and 2010 might have been a recent one again. Like, people have gotten cleaner with their meta puzzles. So that's something like, this is one of the older ones where like, yeah, Modred's weird. It doesn't work anywhere else, like at all. You can search this on Wikipedia and it'll come up, whereas none of the other ones will. And so the ordering here was again that witch thing I was talking about before, where it was fictional witches, and that gave you this ordering, and then it spells out the answer. So different kind of consistent modification. Here again we have 2-word answers. In this case, all of them, it was one short of the other word, so they were difference of one word, one letter. And there's a whole thing with My Fair Lady with H's. So you can add an H to a shorter word and form another English word. And so it's this consistent modification of adding the letter H somewhere in the word and go from beta to bathed. And then once you've done that, the location where you added the H, you pull out of the other word and it spells out your answer.
It was another case of 2-word answers where you made they weren't the same length and you made them the same length,
Right.
so that then you could pair them.
Right. Pairing things by first letters or pairing things by length is a
And then you
common
have
thing
to add more H's to get harvest hearts.
Oh.
Yes.
Arts,
It was
yeah,
Harvest Arts, and then it became Harvest Hearts. Yeah. And that was the answer here. And this one, if you notice that you can add a letter to a thing, so that from a consistency point of view, adding the same letter over and over again is valid. Adding any letter to the same location in the word is also valid. In this case, if like every one of the longer words had an A somewhere in it, you could add a letter at the position that would correspond with the A in that thing, and it would still be valid. But what you don't want to do is take like the word over and add an L to the beginning and make it lover, but then take the word car and add an E at the end to make it care. Like, there's no consistency to that. And you're just going to be going down some wild paths because there's a ton of things you can do that way. So the consistency really matters there. And it can be in different dimensions, but it matters. So really, in the end, it's either associations or letter patterns or pretty much every single meta you're going to come across. Sometimes both. But you either want to associate to some thematic set or find some pattern of letters. And if you do one of those things, you've probably done the hard part of the meta. Not always, but often. So that's all I've got, except I do have some practice ones. So this is from a puzzle I wrote where there was a word search. You had to find these words. There was a way to associate which ones were in which meta, and then you have each of these happening. There is a clue if I hit go again. I'm gonna leave the clue down for now, and just let people take a look at this.
Are we trying to solve one at a time?
Yeah, these are all independent metas.
Yeah.
Yeah, if people want paper, feel free.
So for like Meta 1, they have there's 2 yesterday 5
Which one's the
3 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
We finally threw the baby shower for Foley's baby.
So
You
there's
guys
OR,
today.
you have
I'm gonna
LP,
do
and
another one.
Like babies that are coming, we're gonna see it. I know how the
So Linux.
So we can do baby shower.
Learning.
so it'd be like OR,
Glenn is jeoparding because he edited this puzzle for me.
No, I'm just jeopardying because it's funny, but I can stop. I can stop.
Yeah, if we don't need them to be the same position, there's AD.
OR.
Indeed.
So
Okay, yes.
OR.
Oh, it's like these were all representative of
But
shit.
people would think
It looks like you should line up Meta 1.
No, you're sitting too. So it's not.
Oh,
I can take this piece of paper.
I don't know that I would call them all representatives so much as I was writing 6 metas to go in one puzzle, and so I was going with different things.
Oh, I see. Which makes it great practice.
Yeah, like I did not. This puzzle was written the module after Catch
If
22.
you pair up the words in Meta 1, they each appear to have 2 letters in common, but I can't actually spell anything.
Well,
Well,
it,
not
goes,
in the same
it spells
place.
out O radar, but I don't
Oh.
so the thing I don't like about that is that so the OR in the 4-letter words and the AR in the 6-letter words line up exactly, but like Grand and Hades don't
Right.
fit.
Right.
Like they're shared, but they're not at
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
positions. Also, O radar is different.
Radar. It's like radio, but different.
Oh, radar.
Can I have a paper? What I need now
What else could we possibly do with these words?
Oh, you can write on the back of that.
I mean, Lauren and Taylor.
Yeah, I like Lauren and Taylor. Someone said over there.
But
Oh, that's
doesn't
you can
make
also write
sense.
on that. That was I needed the network address like this. We can to get the
Alright, so Meta 5, I really wanted it to be the days of the week. You know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Thursday?
Wait, which one you're looking at? Meta 5?
Really
it is
Yeah, it is.
otherwise
Yeah.
very
Yeah, it
close.
is.
But
Friday,
Yeah, that works.
Tuesday, Monday.
No, I think that's right. I think that's it. It is. That's correct.
Where's
Yeah.
Monday?
Wait, how is there?
Tuesday's
Use
loose.
anagram in it.
CUE as in
Wednesday,
it's tell.
Wednesday's wide, Thursday's thud,
Oh.
Friday's fair, and Saturday is stay.
So take a letter that's not in the day.
LID.
I'm writing down what you're saying.
OLIDA Y.
It's holiday. You
Holidays.
Sunday's at the beginning.
Sundays
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
the beginning of the week.
Great.
You're not European.
It's holiday. We saw
It's all Meta 5.
Point is, I was getting that from the first letters, but the first letters were actually not in part of that constraint.
So when I was trying to write that, I actually have a version where you don't anagram the things, and the words are just not very good because frio, Spanish for cold, is the only fry that really worked out, and I just didn't like it enough.
Do these 6 form a super meta?
No, there's a really simple shell meta where you just have an index for each of these, and it formed a meta.
Okay.
I find it too difficult to write meta puzzles that are elegant that go into a super meta that is also elegant.
Okay. I just wanted to know if I like.
No.
Okay.
You've got holiday. That's
So
all.
The
Meta
metaphor.
has,
Yeah.
Eager and agree are
like
anagrams
CYC,
together.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which seems not the way you get the answer, but like a weird.
People should listen to Casey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Meta 2 is TO.
So
Oh, yeah.
we start
I
with
saw that
station,
one before.
and then we do bobsled,
What,
and then we do
Yeah.
bicycle.
So there's like CYC, BOB, ET, DOD, FEF, and ACA. tweets.
Oh.
And then we do life form, and we get coyote.
Correct.
Okay,
Meta-
Metaphor has an R in every position.
So for metaphor, you can arrange. For metaphor, you can arrange the words into a grid.
Yeah.
So that you get the same words reading across and down.
Whoa.
And then
Yes, you can.
so you get beard, eager, agree, reeks, and dress.
Oh, the first letters.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what?
And so
So
then
that's
you can go
that's
to
a different grid than the diagonalized R
So can we
grid.
put the grid on top of each other?
Oh.
So if you put
Oh,
them
no, his
take the diagonal.
Caroline's just better because
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
includes the information that
includes
there's an
the
R in every
information.
position. There's in fact every letter in every position.
No, because
No,
there's
that's not
differences.
true.
There's a
That's
difference.
just some accident.
Well, if we diagonalize that, we get barks.
There probably has to
Barks
be
is
some
correct.
letter.
Right.
The fact that there's an R in every position is a coincidence based on the
Yeah, that
constraints.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Any progress on 6?
They all end in vowels.
AMA, INI,
All
Llama
in
is-
vowels is very interesting.
ICO.
Like, that is unusual.
Well, what if it's the
No, because of shampoo.
Like, Delmonico is very strange. I also noticed that it looks like it has, like, lemon.
They also all have an odd number of letters.
They all start with consonants, and they all end with vowels.
But they don't alternate.
Oh, they're solfege ones. Do, fa.
Oh!
Do,
It's
re,
solfege,
mi,
yeah.
do.
First
So if you put them in order, do the middle letters give you something?
Probably.
Of these odd numbers?
Yeah, I like it.
Do gives you O.
T.
T.
T. O.
I already got a big nod from
M.
Amos, so I'm assuming that we've solved the puzzle.
N.
Ottoman.
Ottoman.
Correct.
Yay! We're
Yay.
So it's just 2 and 3.
Two
One.
and
You
One.
got
One.
one.
Oh.
yeah.
One and three.
Right.
One and
One
three.
and
And then
three.
you got coyote for 2, I assume. I didn't
Yeah.
hear.
So far for one, we've observed that there are 2 4-letter answers, 2 5-letter answers, and 2 6-letter answers.
Which all share a pair of letters.
Yeah.
But not
But they don't overlap. on
But
the
they don't
5-letter
overlap
ones.
correctly.
two of them
I
do.
hear Casey saying Lord and Taylor more than once.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was Dan's idea originally.
But I'm not.
The rest of it is more
the others
business
don't
that I've been looking for it.
It's 4 in 3 words and in 1.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But
And
the
in
others
one.
the others don't have anything like that.
So career doesn't have career and Hades.
They both have. Those both
Oh,
have
so
ors.
Lord, Pork, and Taylor all have oars.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So what's up with career, Grand, and Hades?
I don't know.
Well, Grand has and.
Grant has and, but
But then you have like add and a, which seems like a little too little.
Right.
no,
that's right.
no.
Or as, like there's other little words, but that's too
Well, but
easy.
that's gonna be true.
Yeah, because they do all
It was
have
nice when it was
O's and all have
logical
A's and
Yes.
E's.
Yeah.
Right? All the bottom ones have O's and I's as the only vowels, and all the top 3 have A's and E's as the only vowels. Yeah, O has an A.
And an I.
Lord and pork are very similar. They're 4 letters long.
Yeah. I mean, the
And
same
make a
is,
word line.
the same is true for Career and Taylor sharing a pair of letters in the same position, but Grand and Hades aren't the same position. They're somewhere else.
Yeah, Grand and Hades are kind of a pain. They're screwing everything up.
Oh, interesting. You can make hand engraveds out of Grand and Hades.
Hand grenades.
Interesting.
What did you do? What did you do to do that?
Take the GR and the H and
Trade
flip them. It's nothing particularly exciting, but it's there.
Lork poured.
Yeah, there's really no other way to flip this.
What if
I've been staring at 3.
So 3 has something going on with consecutive letters of the alphabet. So we have C, D, E, A, B, C, F, G, H, D, E, F.
Well, that's the worst.
Or no, you keep going.
And then O.
Yeah, it's
R, S, T.
Yeah,
Start
E.
spelling
So
something
take out the extra
O-R-I-G.
letter. O-R-T.
Oh, it's F, G, H, I. Oh, so it's T. It's the one letter left over.
Right.
So
C, D, E, O, I, C,
Not in that
O,
order.
O, R, T.
No, we're T, U, E, S. But they're alphabetized, right?
Yeah.
So you order them by
routes?
the letters. I order them by
Routes is correct.
Routes.
How did you order that, Lauren?
By
Diagram?
anagramming.
Alphabetically, probably by the
Alphabetically, come on. It's A, B, C, D,
How,
E,
how
F.
did I do it? I did it by anagram.
You should have lied.
The question was how did Amos do it? Now it's
Like, we knew that that was a thing.
Yeah, that's true.
We would have.
If I had thought about it for 10 more seconds,
You
I
see,
would have
crab means anagram.
Okay, so
I think it's called.
I was going with fudge means
So we should change
anagram.
our name to Gear.
I think fight means anagram.
Gears of War
Yeah, you
means
can-
rage.
Yeah, it's this. It's not
Gears of War
Or Gear of War.
So, Meta 1.
Gears of War means rages.
Meta 1.
There's not yet been anything that's Aerosmith.
There's not going to be.
It's what
The module theme, like that one's Catch-22, this one's Aerosmith.
Okay, so if we look at all the
Oh,
other words,
so
Lewis.
I have a hint to this, but the hint is just going to give it away.
Yeah, don't
You
give
know,
it
I'm not going to. It's going to give it away. I'm not going to. Just need to make sure
You're
I'm
not
getting
there,
lucky.
I was almost getting satisfying results from pretty random anagramming, but that's not justified by anything. Like, all these give you satisfying words when you add a letter and anagram, but that's probably most short words.
Yeah.
That's gotta be
Give
true.
me an example with pork.
Poker.
Okay. I want to pursue this.
Okay. Like, they all have pretty much one anagram when you add a letter and anagram.
Here's my problem. Take Lord and Pork, which badly want to be paired if you're pairing. You either have or you have LDPK, which are the shittiest letters on the planet. So I'm sort of trying to make pork a better word.
actually
Career
pork.
to what?
Career gives you terrace.
What does Lord get you?
World.
So
What's the extra letter on terrace?
The extra letter is T. So the extra letters I get spell wet bet, which is terrible.
You're wrong.
I'll bet it's bet wet.
What is Grandad?
What if you take a letter away and then re-anagram?
Underwater casino.
Hades?
The answer is
The
underwater
Andor
casino.
is really
What?
bothering
Yes.
me, but I can't make it work for career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was bothering me too. And
That's
let
the
me go as
only
far
thing I
as to
can't
say.
Taylor, I got orbital.
Wait, how does it work for Hades?
Hey,
Yeah,
if there's and in there, it's just ignoring. Oh,
There's
there's
no and.
and.
There's add, but there's no and.
Like, the only reason I continue to pursue this is the fact that there is exactly one satisfying anagram of each of these.
That you found so far.
That I asked my anagram for.
Grand could be garden or gander.
You're right. Never mind. Cool. Okay.
Done.
Cool. Drop that idea. That wasn't very hard.
Says you.
World.
oh wait.
Yeah, and dragon. And, okay, never mind. Grand has tons.
You notice the words are the same length. I think each share exactly 2 letters.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
Notice-
can't spell anything nice of those.
Nothing of those.
Oh, great are.
Two of them are the same position,
Yeah.
and one of them isn't,
It's not.
which is
That's
irritating.
Yeah, that was like the first thing we observed about things, but we
All
haven't
right.
gotten anywhere with
I mean,
So-
if we
so
shift
given that
it,
Queen-
Actually, maybe there's like a lining up, right?
Given
Like,
that
no,
you
but like
clearly
A and
need
D
dragon
are not,
instead of
oh,
danger,
they're
the
not
answer is now
adjacent.
wet bot.
Wet
What?
bot.
No.
What about bot wet?
Makes one bubble in the let's go straight to the pool.
Wet bot.
Can you?
So all of these have a shorter word in the middle of them, but I don't know if that's.
Some of them have more than one, which is a little bit troubling.
Do they?
Taylor has tail and or.
No,
But
I'm
you
saying
can also say
strictly in
ale.
the strictly in the middle. I'm saying ale.
Oh.
Ale.
or aid,
Or add.
Ran,
ran,
R.
and R. Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
What is aid?
But then you end up with a whole bunch
AID.
of consonants.
Career doesn't
and it's
work.
still
No,
terrible.
no.
You can't get career to work.
Oh.
Or-
Like lemonade.
Yes,
Or it
but
could
you
be
end
ad.
up with the wrong number.
Could be
Oh.
ad.
Yeah.
Oh right, I keep forgetting about ad.
Oh,
weekend.
right.
Spot.
Spot it. You gotta spot it.
Oh, that gives me an extra E, so that's helpful, actually.